Welcome to Trauma Toxin Truths, everybody. I'm Nina Vasquez.
And I'm Dr. Isela Garcia. Are we good now?
Yep, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. We're here. We were having some tech issues and we had to restart, but we are live and it's Wednesday. So it's a live coaching opportunity. If you'd like to get live coaching, Isela will drop in the comments the link to come on live with us. And all you have to do is click on that link and, come with a coaching topic and we'll coach you. I will coach you, and Dr. Isela will bump you upside the head with some some spiritual teaching and mentorship.
I don't know if I've shared this on here. Maybe I have. The last time we talked, when my daughter was 4, and they were talking about what do your parents do?
Oh no, I don't think you shared that here.
Yeah. No, did I just share it with you?
Yeah, just with me.
So when my daughter was in preschool, they were having a conversation. I don't know the context around this, but the conversation was, about their sharing what their parents did for a living. And so when it was Gia's turn, she said, "My mama tells people about themselves and they cry."
That is so hilarious that she was 4.
And the teacher told me that. And and that was when I was like coaching like teachers.
Well, this is truths, right? Trauma
Yeah.
talking truths. So that is true because Isela has made me cry before.
Yeah, I don't make you cry.
I'm just saying.
You sound horrible.
I've
But
cried in your presence many times.
my daughter had, because when I since she was very, very little, she would go with me to work all the time. And I even traveled with her for the first year of her life. And so there were many, many times that she was witness to conversations that I would have with people about their all the things, because it would be about a particular topic in education, and then we would end up unfolding some of the things or unraveling some of the things that were getting in the way of them being able to like be fully present, or and so of course it would end up being a session.
Yeah.
And so then my daughter witnessed a lot of people crying. But that's not what I do. Like, that's not my intention.
I witness a lot of people crying too, and I definitely don't intend to, but I will tell you that if we can allow ourselves to release via crying, we get some energy moving. And, there's a lot of us that try not to cry because we think it's weak,
Most
and
definitely.
it is totally not weak. Crying, I think, is one of our body's way of releasing stuck energy.
I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about crying because I have worked with a lot of super strong women. And I think that, and have heard these words many, many times over. These words, "I am not a crier."
Me too.
I've heard that so many times. And I think for a lot of us, not everyone, but for a lot of us, the reason why we don't, and I say collectively, we don't think we're criers is because that's the way we kept ourselves safe.
Yeah. And the song that just came to me was Big Girls Don't Cry,
Mm-hmm.
right? We are conditioned to think that strong women don't cry,
Yeah.
right? We're stoic. And then we even, especially in many, brown or people of color cultures, I have a friend of mine who's Asian, and she, would
Oh,
like, it's very stoic. And we say, I've even heard people say, like, my grandmother was very stoic and strong. She never cried.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, she never cried.
Yeah.
And we're conditioned to think that that is strong.
Yeah. And it's the same. I think that's the message that I think it's changing now, but in my generation, most boys got, big boys don't cry. Are you a baby? Are you a little girl? And so we have a lot of these ideas that have really conditioned us as to what we think and what we feel about crying. And I remember one particular conversation where somebody was talking about, I don't know how many times she said it to me in a conversation, I'm not a crier. I'm not a crier. And as we continue to unravel that, because for me, it's about being curious. So when somebody says to me, I'm not a crier, and I go, okay, let's kind of just talk about why you think you're not a crier. Like where does that come from? Is it that you don't think that you can cry, should cry? What messages did you get around that? And in this particular conversation, and I think this is probably true for most, the understanding of their journey in life is intellectualized.
Yeah.
Because, the way that we survive situations is we disconnect from our emotional state. And so she was able to tell the story of what happened in her life and all the ways that, she showed up as a result of the things that happened in her life, but did it from a very, very intellectual place. This happened and this is why I'm like this. But didn't have any connection to her emotions about it. And then the moment they started to come up, it was very unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And she'd be like, I'm not a crier. I don't know why this is happening. I'm not a crier. So it's a very scary experience if it's not something that you are accustomed to.
Yeah. And the nervous system, I've had clients where they literally cannot cry. It's like the nervous system shuts them down probably about the back of their throat. They can feel some energy right there, and then it just presses it down. There's this response to like, we do not cry, conditioned out of you, right? It's like not safe to cry. Bam, we will shut you down. So we usually have some sort of energy right here. I've been able to cry, but I think in my life, for me, though, it was like I was crying. If you would think about, Isela, when you think about the babies who cry and nobody comes, they stop crying. But I didn't stop crying, but nobody came. I would cry all the time, but it was almost like crying was not helping. Right.
I will tell you that is probably one of the most challenging long-term, the challenging implications of that for babies and young children. And let me explain why. When we're born and when we're young children, we cry to get a response, to get our needs met, right? That's the way we communicate our needs.
Yeah.
And that's how attachment is formed. Bonding and attachment is formed. When we cry, somebody consistently responds to our needs. And when adults, our caregivers, are inconsistent in responding to our needs, what happens is that we don't just give in, we give up. And so then we start to believe, and this is where these patterns and these belief systems start to form, that I am not safe.
Yeah.
And there isn't somebody who can consistently care for my needs. And this happens especially with our babies, with our infants. And the whole notion of, let the baby cry, you're going to spoil the baby if you pick the baby up. It's one of the worst things that we do to babies, because attachment is the foundation for how we form relationships.
Right.
And intimacy within relationships. And so it's a critical part that sets really the foundation for our lives.
Yeah. I think relationships has been one of my most challenging things in my life. I think many of us don't realize, especially we're like, in our, I don't know, maybe you're in your 30s and you're dating and people talk to you about how your attachment style shows up. We just don't understand or realize our attachment style is formed by 18 months,
Mhm.
And so it's a healing process that uh, I don't want to say it's complex because I don't want to make it seem hard or something you can't do, but it is at a deeper level than just I just know that I have an anxious attachment style or I have a avoidant attachment style. It's deeper than just knowing it. Are you frozen?
You were frozen, and now we're back.
Okay. Your face is just so stoic. I was like, that's not Isella. Okay, so we kind of went off on a little tangent about crying and stuff, but that's what we do. That's what we're here for, really talk about truths. And if you're just joining us and you want to come on live for live free coaching, please do so. There's a link in the comments. You can come on live if you'd like.
So we were going to talk about, we did go off on a tangent about
Yes.
crying and attachment. And I'm trying to think if I'm done with that yet.
Yeah. Are we
I
done?
may not be done with that. What's really interesting, and then we can move on to the kind of the next thing that we were going to kind of explore. When I was growing up, so my mom and dad got divorced or separated, divorced, whatever. Really, when I was really young. So I was like 2, something around that. And my dad's side of the family, he lived with my nana and my tata, which are my grandparents. And in that house were all my aunts and uncles. All my aunts and uncles lived there. So there were, let's see, 1, 2, 3 uncles, 2 aunts, my dad, and my nana and tata in the house. So a lot of people in the house. And I was the only grandchild. And even though my mom couldn't, I know now she couldn't. She didn't have the resources. She was living in her chronic state of trauma. I mean, just unresolved trauma. She didn't know how to give or receive love, quite honestly. But at my dad's house with all my tias and my tios and my nana and my tata, there was always somebody to be with me, and they doted on me. Like my tata used to make me breakfast, and when I remember every time I was over there, he used to work in hospitality, so he was like a bartender and he worked in restaurants, and so he would have my plate out with my eggs, and I loved his beans. Loved his beans, and it was because there was like a pound of lard in them.
Yeah.
They were so freaking good. But he would have my eggs and my beans, and he would have my toast, and they were cut diagonally with butter on them, probably margarine.
Yes. I can't believe it's not.
He'd have my cup of coffee. I had coffee as a very young child, probably because they figured out that it calmed the shit out of me. And so he would have it there. And every morning I would wake up and he would have my little plate with my food ready for me. And I would sit at the table and eat. And he had already eaten. So he would have the newspaper out because he was a brilliant man. He used to do the crossword puzzle and in the newspaper. And then he would sketch. And so he had these pencils in his pocket. And he would just take any sheet of paper. There wasn't a lot of paper in the house. It was like backs of things. And he would like draw me and he would hand it to me as I was eating. And so I always had like a grown up, or at least they were in their 20s. So grown up.
Yeah.
Ice cream truck would come and they're like, "Ay, Mia, you want ice cream?" And so they'd throw money at me and I go out there. And so my tío used to do my hair, and like, it's just, I had people who took care of me and loved me. And I think that despite everything that I dealt with at home, I had this space where I was loved, and I was, they took care of me in a way that I felt safe and secure.
Yeah.
And I know that that's where my resilience comes from. Like, I know that. Whereas my sister had a very different experience of life. We're 7 years apart, and she didn't get that time with them for lots of reasons. There was, the animosity between my parents. And so she didn't get to have the nurturing, the connection, the support. And I think that seriously impacted her attachment. And so even though we had the same parents, our experience was so uniquely different because of the connection that was provided to me
Mhm.
by extended family. And it doesn't, that's one of the things that a lot of people think. It doesn't have to be your biological
Right.
parents to give you that type of care. What we understand is 1 year of solid, consistent, loving connection from a caregiver within the first 5 years in life can change the trajectory of your life.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
1 solid year. So that's why teachers are so important. Caregivers like nanas and tatas and tios, and like who 1 year of just loving, consistent, knowing that they're safe, knowing that they're seen and heard can change a child's whole trajectory of life. So it's, when we are in relationships with children, whether you are, a parent or not a parent, you could be a stepmom or a stepdad. You could be, somebody who just takes care of children like after school, but you're the neighborhood person that, the kids come over and they hang out at your house. That 1 year of consistent, loving, responsive care can change a child's life.
That's so good to know. And so it really gives hope
Mm.
to many children who don't have a safe, loving home because, yeah, there's so many people that I know in my life that say like their life was affected by their uncles. They had good, like, let's say they didn't have a father figure in their life, but they had these great role models.
Yeah.
Especially I've heard men, they share with me, I had amazing role models when I was young. My dad wasn't there, and I was like, oh yeah, because you had these strong role models in your life, it
Mhm.
made such a big difference,
Mhm.
right? And then you feel secure in your life because you've been supported. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
The extended family, and this is where it takes a village, that whole idea. I think that historically, when we were in community like that, so, for whatever reason, if the parents, the people closest to the child, were unable to care for the child, sometimes we're talking post-traumatic or what's the postpartum
Postpartum
depression.
depression. Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of things that come
Yeah.
into play there. If you had the extended family, whether it's blood or not, you have people to care for one another. And I think that's really what created some, better levels of attachment and connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think we should keep talking about this or what do
Mm,
you?
Go on to the next thing.
Okay. We don't have to. I like this topic as well. It's just, because if we do it, it's a whole, it can be a whole hour or something on what to do or how to heal it.
Well, what we were thinking about, talking about was how to manifest. If we didn't have anybody on for coaching, so you can still jump on for coaching if you want to come on, but we were talking about like, how do you manifest opportunities in your life? So
Mhm.
how do you do that? How do you manifest opportunities? I am a strong believer that we have commercialized the idea of manifestation, kind of like yoga. Like yoga is one of those things that, I mean, there is like deep roots in yoga in Eastern philosophy. Like it really has a deep meaning. It isn't just let's go do some stretches and, try to be mindful in the experience. Like it is a deep mindful meditative experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think we've commercialized it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think meditation or manifestation is very much the same thing that people have kind of jumped on. You go on to TikTok and there are people like teaching you like the formula for manifestation. It's the thought, it's the feeling, it's, the backward engineering. What is it that you want? What would you experience? What would it feel like to have
Mhm.
it? And you go that way. And I think you can very well do that. I think a lot of people do that and are very successful at it. But what happens, because I was one of those people that was very successful at that, is it becomes the hustle. becomes the hustle, where you're in a constant state of feeling like you have to stay 2 steps ahead. And it really isn't something that's embodied fully, completely.
Yeah.
It's something I do rather than something I am.
Right. Like the act as if, do as if. And so you're always doing as you think that the person or that the what you're manifesting would be doing. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And you're not living it as if it is true for you. And so in a weird sort of way, you are still sort of chasing,
Okay.
you're still chasing. So but I do think there is something that's super significant about capturing what it is that you want. And so many years ago, when I started, like many years ago, gosh, it's like over 20 years now, at least, I started, I'd done lots of spirituality sorts of stuff. But what was really significant to me was Dr. Wayne Dyer used to talk about Neville Goddard all the time. He used to talk about Neville all the time. And I loved Dr. Wayne Dyer. If you don't know him, he's passed. It's been a couple years since he's crossed over. But what I loved about him is when he first started, I was very young when he first started, but I hit him kind of like, um, I was introduced to him in my early 20s. And I'm telling you, I bought every single one of his books, like even the very, very erroneous zones, very, very first book that he bought or that he'd ever written. I know his whole story. And the reason why I loved him is because he was a kid in an orphanage. And everybody thought, oh, these poor children, but he never had the perception of this, oh, I'm a poor child, like poor me. He never saw his life that way. He saw it as like he got opportunities to meet different people and have different experiences. And like his whole perception of his reality was so different from how others perceived him.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really, really fascinating. And he was a fabulous storyteller. And he was grounded. Like he felt like he was so relatable. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like I love Deepak Chopra, but sometimes it's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I can relate to what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
I could relate to Wayne Dyer's experiences. And so I followed him pretty extensively. And as he continued to write books, he went from self-help to really into spirituality. And you can see it in the progression of his writing. And I took the journey along with him. And part of that experience was being exposed to Neville Goddard. He made reference to him a lot in his writings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to the point where I was like, okay, I've read all of Wayne's books. I've been to see him like 15, 20 times at least. And so I'm like, okay, who's this Neville Goddard? So I got his book. Actually, I listened to the audiobooks is the first time I had been introduced to it. And there are some things in that book that talk about getting in alignment with the belief system and it is as if it has already happened, but it's not, you do have to be aware of your thoughts. Like where are your focused attention, right? Are you coming from a place of this isn't going to happen? I don't have the education. I don't have the experience. There are limited jobs or there are limited opportunities. It's like we have all of that we have to get the gunk out of the way, right? Because if that's the underlying current, you're going to have a hard time attracting something different. So there is a lot of truth to noticing where your focused attention is. So the second thing was really about like getting in alignment with bliss, like getting in alignment with just love and feeling good about each day, which is fucking hard if you like have hard days because we're like this all the time, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I don't even remember the mantra now, but there was a mantra that Neville talked about because I do a different one. I do the mantra that I do every single day or for most days, many times through the day is I know who I am. I know how I serve. That is that actually comes from the channelings of Paul Selig. So I've kind of moved to that. But at the time, there was a mantra that I used. I wish I could remember what it was. But there was a mantra that I used that helped me kind of get in alignment of knowing that the universe has my back. That is the most important message that for I think you to understand is that the universe is going to always provides opportunities for you, but sometimes we block that because of what we believe, our limiting beliefs. Sometimes we're so caught up in our own drama and story of it, we don't even see shit rolling out in front of us.
Yeah.
Because that's not what we asked for. So we're looking for what we asked for. So what I learned from this experience, so I'm going to go back to it, be mindful of where I'm putting my focused attention, really wonder about, do I believe that the universe conspires for me? Does the universe actually provide opportunities for me? You have to explore that. You have to investigate your beliefs about that, because if you were let down at certain times in your life, you have to explore what you believe about those periods of time. And in my particular case, or with people that I've worked with more than anything else, God failed me. God left me out, and God wasn't there to answer my prayers. Like those beliefs about your relationship with source, right? I didn't have that. When I was growing up, faith was what pulled me through the experience, right? But you have to explore that piece. If you think that the world's against you, you're not going to be able to manifest from a place of that embodied experience. So that's the next thing. Then the thing after that is you have to be super clear about what you want. Super, super clear about what you want. But you have to let go of what it is that you want. So let me explain that a little bit more. You have to be clear about the experiences you want to have, but not necessarily the end game. And a lot of people start with an end game. Okay. They start, I have this hair that's bothering me. I'm not so ADHD. So here's the end game. Like, I want to have this position that is the CEO of this Fortune 500 company. Okay. I want this position. This is a very ego-driven experience. It's okay for you to want that. It's okay for you to drive for that. And you can totally get there. I'm not saying that you can't. But if you want to live in alignment where you're listening to the opportunities and the experiences that are provided by source, allow source to guide you. So you're like, okay, I don't know what my end game is in terms of like, what do I want for my company or what position or anything that way, but what experiences do you want to have? Okay. And so for me, what I learned to do is that mantra, whatever, and I'm going to have to find it. When I find it, I'll post it in the description because I know I have it somewhere. And so what I did was I wrote down the experience I wanted, the opportunities that I wanted, the things I wanted to be able to do and share. So I'll give you an example. I come from a place of education, consulting. Someone had said to me a long time ago, everyone says, oh, you don't want to be a teacher. They don't make any money. They don't make any money. And somebody said to me, Isela, you'll make as much money as you believe you'll make. And I was like, oh my God, like that, I can make that true for myself. Yeah. And so I wrote down, actually, I took it down a couple of years ago on a dry erase board in my living room. The front part of my house used to be my office. So it was right there. And I wrote down, I want to have autonomy. So I want a big contract to be able to hire people. I want complete autonomy, though. I want to be able to be creative because that's my thing, to be creative. I don't want to be pushed in a box. I want to have the creative freedom, be able to hire people, be able to inspire, and be able to create the ripple effect in the work that I do. I want it to have a lasting impact. So I wrote all of the things that I wanted to experience that came from love, that came from the root of love. So inspiration, I wanted to hire people because the people that I had worked with in the past, because I liked the people that I knew. There are people that were like, I think are magnificent thinkers. And it's amazing to be with a group of people who challenge you and you get ideas from one another. And there's this synthesized experience of working together. Like, I wanted to be able to bring and pay them well. So I wrote all of these things out that I wanted to be able to do for others in all the ways. And I got down to like my hours. What did I want my hours to be? I wanted to have some flexibility. I wanted to be like all of the picture. And then like once I did that, painted it really well about the experiences, I let it go.
What do you mean by let it go?
I didn't worry about it. So it was like putting an order into the universe. But again, you have to, where's your focused thoughts and what's your relationship with source in terms of do you believe opportunities will come your direction? Because if those two things don't line up, then you're going to keep blocking yourself. So I put this order in, and again, very detailed about what I wanted to experience. And then I literally, I think I'm pretty positive. I sat and I did a prayer and I said, okay, these are the experiences that I would like to have. I don't really know how this is going to come to be. And I trust that you're going to be able to do this for me. And that's the way actually how I pray. That's like how I have a conversation with spirit. It's not formal or anything like that. And I have my hand here and my hand on my belly, because I often, when I'm sending things out that way, I tend to hold myself in that way.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I did, yes, if I'm remembering correctly, because this was a really big one for me, the last thing I did was I felt you have to call upon the feeling of peace. So it's almost like a sense of security, right? That peace, love, and security. So it's recognizing that I'm taken care of, that I'm loved. And that came from Neville's work, because again, there's this process of like, when you doubt that it's going to come or how it's going to come, the doubt is going to be the block.
Ooh, okay. So this is me getting very vulnerable, and I think it might help somebody. So if I wrote down like 4 steps. So focus attention. Look at, do you really believe the universe has your back? Get super clear about what you want to experience. And 4, let it go and create peace and love. Did I get them?
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2 is where I believe, for me personally, there's a block there. Yeah.
Right when you said it, I saw it. Right when you said it, I saw it.
There's a block there. And it's activating emotionally too.
I feel it. I feel it in you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we just be stirring the pot when I learned from Marcella. Yeah. And, and I'll share this with you because maybe this will land for somebody watching. Yesterday, I was really wrestling internally about something, and I was asking spirit for help. That is very unlike me, right? To ask anybody for help is very unlike me. And I was asking spirit for help, and I heard this whisper. This could be ego. I don't know for sure, but I heard this whisper that said, spirit is not outside of you. Like, universe is not outside of you. Like, it's within you, and you're asking for something outside of you that's already within you. Now, I don't know if that's the ego saying there's nobody else to ask for help, that you are it. I don't know, but that's kind of how it felt. It was like you're asking somebody outside of you, but you are source. So talk to me. Help us through that.
I think that when we get messages like that, sometimes we can spin ourselves crazy into the state of going, where was the message from?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I suggest people, when you get a message and you have that uncertainty, especially as you're starting to like become aware and starting to open up and starting to like trust your intuition to some degree, it's very, very common for people to stay in that state of questioning.
Yeah.
And so if the message that's coming to you feels genuine and like it's not spinning you into a state of fear, concern, doubt, that's a message. If it's not doing those things, that's a message that's gently coming from spirit. But if it's a message that gets you triggered into a state of fear, uncertainty, doubt, then that's an ego-driven question.
Okay, that makes sense. I think for me personally, that felt like it wasn't fear, doubt. It was more like,
it was a nudge.
It was like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, meaning like my focused attention, my thoughts, my like, what I believe, it's all going like in Neville's work, basically, and
Yeah.
I'm like coming off the end of reading his work, and I must read it again because it's like that kind of work. Um, so yeah, I have some work to do. So if somebody has some work to do in the, do I believe the universe has my back?
Okay.
Where would you say start?
So all of this needs to be written down, by the way. Okay.
Okay.
It's not enough to do it in your head. There's something magical, and I don't have an explanation for this. But there's something magical about putting pen to paper. And for me, I have dry erase boards. My whole front living room is like a whole wall of dry erase boards. And I'm not up there anymore. So now I have some over here next to my desk because I write a lot.
Okay.
My whole ideas, when I'm trying to be creative. So it has to be written down. Okay. So you're going to go through just being mindful of where your focused attention is. And I would typically do this for like a week time. So during the week, and I know this sounds laborious, but I actually would set a timer on my phone. Actually, it was on my watch because I had an iWatch. And it would go off and go, okay, like every hour or every 2 hours, it would like ding. And I would go, okay, what am I thinking about right now? Like, where's my focused attention?
Okay.
So I would explicitly set time to just notice, what am I thinking about? What am I worried about? What am I focusing on? Because it was one of the ways that I got really, really good at just noticing where my thoughts are. Right. So that's the first thing. The second thing was really, what's my relationship with source in terms of trusting in source? Now, one of the big things for those of us who come from a history of trauma, one of the really big things is sometimes at some point in our life, we think, why was that? Why am I being punished this way?
Yeah.
Why won't God come save me? Why won't, I used to pray for a family that was out there that I belonged to,
Yeah.
but I looked
Yeah.
so much like my mom. I was like, no, mother out there who will love me.
Oh, I'm imagining you. I'm super emotional right now. So just calling myself out. I'm imagining you at that age, like
Yeah.
looking for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
religion feeds into that also.
yes.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so there were times in my life where I was like, why me? Why do I have to experience this? Right.
Yes.
And then my sister was born when I was 7, and there were a lot of responsibilities as a mom, like I had to do because my mom worked, and I had a lot of resentment about that. And
Yeah.
so then I was also like, why me? Like, why do I have to be the one to take care of things? Like, why do I have to take care of my little sister? Like
Yeah.
why me? And so those kinds of things, sometimes that feeling like, God's source, the all that is, wasn't there for you, or left you out to dry, or didn't answer the prayers in the way that you thought, will get in the way of us being able to believe that the universe the universe conspires for us. And this
Yeah.
is why what I call this like artificial manifestation process that a lot of
Yes.
us do,
Yes.
because we can vibrationally create our, experiences. But really, if we want to get into just being instead of doing, we've got to unpack that. So what I would say to you is, think back if there were ever times in your life where you felt what I just described, something similar to that, like, why me? Why did God give me to? Because before I knew that I chose my mom and my parents, right?
Yeah.
I used to be like, why the fuck would God put me here?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Why would God let me have so much pain in my life? Like, right? And so I had to kind of explore those beliefs that I had been not loved enough by God.
That's really powerful. And if you've done this work and you're getting activated right now, this is an invitation for you to do it again, because I feel like, my ego is saying, or the ego is saying, well, she's done that work, right? But you know what? If I had done that work and I had really healed those times, I wouldn't be here needing to know how the heck to manifest an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because then I would be at a body level, I would be at peace and love and trust. right? But if I'm not trusting the universe, then it's still in the way.
And sometimes not trusting the universe, the situations that you experienced in general, then we break it down to where was trust broken in your life.
Oh, fuck.
Right? Because trust is the big undercurrent, right? Because you had to do it all on your own. You had to pull up your own bootstraps. You had to like get up every single time that you felt like, yes, that makes us resilient, but that just means that we got up because like what other option did we have, right?
Right.
And so we were strong and we did it and all of those fabulous things that comes with, being resilient, but we were resilient because we had to be.
Yeah, you're resilient because of what you walk through.
Yeah.
And, so from a trauma healing perspective, Isela, are you saying that we go back to those moments and then am I using like, an inner child, a healing repair process there? Am I telling her what was actually true? Like kind of what is the thing?
There's a couple different ways you can do this.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely. If you can pinpoint those moments where you were let down or where you felt like you weren't loved enough to be protected,
Yeah.
or that you had a situation where you were that you couldn't trust the caregivers, the adults in your life, right? So you could definitely go back to those experiences and do some very specific reconnection to your younger self and let them have the conversation about what happened and that they were still lovable and they were still like all of those things. And here's another way to do this. You can also retell the story of the experience. Okay. So we can retell the story of the experience instead of it being a shitty, horrible thing, which it was in a lot of ways. But damn it, look at the opportunity it's presented itself to me. So yes, I felt like, why the hell didn't somebody come save me? Right.
Yeah.
But what opportunity it provided for me is I did get to learn to stand in my power. Here's the opportunity that taught me how to do the work that I do now. It taught me how to be the voice for people who had lost their voice. Like that, I can tell the story in a way that helps me see why it was a significant part of my journey. So it depends on where you're at in terms of your level of, I think, your capacity and also your relationship to your inner child or your parts of yourself. So it's going to depend on who you are. If you are not at the level of doing that deep sort of inner child kind of work, because it can be hard and scary if you don't have somebody to co-regulate with you, it just tell a different story. So
I love that.
So write it down, write the different story. So write a different story. So you go, whatever it is, you say, you can do it in third person. So you could actually tell the story. There was a little girl who was 12 years old. And at 12 years old, these are the things that happened. And what ended up coming of that is blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I would also put, these are the things that happened and she felt alone and she felt angry. And she wanted, why did God do this to her? And why isn't God protecting her? Especially if you're if you have a religious experience at all, because the idea is that, there's talk about salvation. There's talk about being a good person. There's talk about, I'm all of those things, but still nobody's here to protect me.
Yeah.
And so I would retell that story.
That's powerful work. Like retelling this story is powerful in many ways, but I had never thought that this would be a part of the manifestation process. Like you just don't think that. I've done rewriting your past before, but this is really hitting home. And one thing that you hit me was when you said, trust. Where was trust broken? Something that's hitting me is also, I was just writing yesterday morning about self-abandoning and people pleasing, but in a way of self-abandoning as a term. And what I'm realizing is that when trust has been broken in our life, we don't trust, but we also don't trust ourselves because we have broken trust with ourselves, right? right? Like we don't do what we say we're going to do. So I think I'm just going to add that to my like, okay, so rewrite this, retell the story, look at all the ways I'm breaking trust with myself now, right? That's what I would add to that. Yeah.
And I have one more thing. It's like gratitude. So gratitude goes along the lines with this. You'll find opportunities where you just kind of go, oh my goodness, look at that. I could trust the universe. Look
Yeah.
at that. The universe provides for me. You
Yeah.
know, it's even like it's something so simple. Like if you see a penny on the floor, on the ground,
Yeah.
and I do this one. My mantra for that is thank you for the abundance that consistently shows up in my life at work and at play. And I'm like, look at that. And there's a penny. I don't pick it up usually. I leave it there. And I'm like, thank you. Money just it just shows up in my life.
Yeah.
So what you're doing then is you're going, see, I am trusting. We can trust the universe. It
Yes.
just shows up in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
But again, if there's an undercurrent of mistrust, it's going to be your block.
Yep. Oh, I relate to this so much. And, you know, I feel like a lot of times when Isela is teaching us spiritual, I don't want to say concepts, truths, spiritual truths. It is right exactly in line with where I am right now in my spiritual journey. And so if you feel like you're listening to this replay or live and you feel like, well, shoot, I'm supposed to be somewhere else, don't believe that. You're right where you're supposed to be, just as I am, just as Isela is. We're right where we're supposed to be. So see this more as an invitation, right? Not like, oh, I have to do this because I have a block here. Yes. Yeah. We're here right now.
And there's this thing called divine timing. And I wish people would stop this idea of, I missed that opportunity when I was 20. And I should have done this when I was 35. And if I would have done this instead of that, then this would have happened. Stop fucking doing that. Yeah. Because there are no accidents and mistakes. And I know that's really hard because a lot of us have had shitty ass lives and we want to go, I made a mistake, or if I would have, right, just let it all go, because there's this thing called divine timing. Nothing that's truly yours is ever lost. Nothing that is truly yours is ever lost. So that job that you didn't take, or that experience that you got that passed you by, didn't pass you by. It was never yours. But the experience, as if it comes back around again, because it will, if it was intended to be yours, it will come back around again, or something greater and better. And this is why we need to stop thinking about end game, because our limiting perspectives put a cap on possibility.
Big mic drop there, right?
Yes, because the universe has more, could have way more than you could even dream of.
Yes, way more. Our mind just limits us so much. You know, when you said that, I have a mentor that says there's nowhere where God isn't. And it just reminds me that, like, you know, we right where we are is divine timing. And anytime there is a should, you think a thought that says that has a should in it, there's suffering.
Yes. I'm exactly where I need to be. And I trust that the universe is guiding me every moment of every day.
Thank you for that, Isela. Thank you for that teaching. I receive, and it's landing in my body right now. This, like, you can look at your life and see all the ways that you have been protected, right? Even if you have walked through some shit.
Yes.
Which both of us have.
Yes.
You can see all the ways that brought you here to today. And let your filter, put the filter down so you can see them.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay. That's it.
All right, everyone. We hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and we will be back on Friday. So join us on Friday.
Bye, everybody.